You know, the great thing about the NFL, and I suppose it depends upon your perspective, but for me, I like it. I like the fact that you can have a team that's been bad or really bad, but they do some good things, they draft some good players, put it together, and then good things happen for them just like that. Like in the NBA, it's a couple of teams matter and the rest really don't. That's just the way it is. There's no other way of sugarcoating it. Most of the games don't matter. Even the majority of the playoffs don't matter until you get to maybe the conference championship round. Then you've got the actual best of the best teams, the only teams you really envision having any shot of winning the championship. But in the NFL, you could have a team go from worst to first. You can have a team win 3 games, and then the next year they win 10. You can have a team sit there and come out of nowhere and go to the Super Bowl and win it. Hell, that's what the Eagles did. That's exactly what the Eagles did. Nobody saw that coming, but it happened. And that's what can bring so much hope for every fan base in the NFL and every NFL team, is that if you do the right things, if you piece it together right, it can happen just like that. And you look at the Jaguars. I mean, this was a team that for years couldn't get out of its own way, for years sucked, poor draft choices, bad money spent in free agency, skip and whoop-de-woo and all of that. But over the past couple of years, started to slowly assemble a competent roster, bringing in good picks via the draft, making some what turned out to be decent free agent signings. And you all of a sudden get to 2017, and here are the Jaguars coming on like gangbusters. I mean, when you think about it, it's crazy. And all of that without a true blue franchise top 10, 12 quarterback in the league. Imagine if Blake Bortles was that type of guy. We'd be talking about the Jaguars being the new Seahawks, talking about them being the favorites to win the Super Bowl, and potentially several of them. This Jaguars team has a lot of other elements in place that screams out that they can be a championship contender. And in 2017, after years of waiting for it, it finally happened. They pieced it together, and bam, here they are. And they caught people off guard and caught them by surprise. And I know the way the season ended was disappointing, and it sucks to sit there and get to the AFC Championship game to only end up losing it. And not only that, but lose it in the fashion that you did, being down or up double digits in the fourth quarter in Foxborough against Brady and Belichick, and then finding a way to screw it up. Sucks. But when you look at where Jacksonville was, and when you look at what they've been and who they are right now, like there are people that are high on the Jaguars. There are people pumping up the Jaguars. There are people that are excited about the Jaguars. When's the last time you could ever really truly say that about the Jacksonville Jaguars? And to think I sat there and said that General Manager David Caldwell should be fired before the season started. Oopsie daisies. Ding dong! I was wrong. And I have to eat that one. That's for damn sure. Although, if one guy doesn't play better, it doesn't matter. And I will still stand by what I said. But when you look at this Jaguars team, they're able to keep the vast majority of their core intact this offseason. Yes, they lost Allen Robinson to free agency to the Bears, but this was the same Allen Robinson that missed pretty much all of 2017 with the torn ACL anyways. He wasn't in the fold at all. He was a complete non-factor for them, and they still ended up going to the AFC Championship game anyways. They lose Allen Hurns in free agency. He ends up going to the Dallas Cowboys. But again, how much of a loss was Allen Hurns in the grand scheme of things? Probably a little bit of one, but not a significant one. Mercedes Lewis also left after all those years of being with the team. But they bring in a guy like Austin Seferian-Jenkins, which I thought was really one of the underrated free agent signings this year. The Jaguars are able to bring him in on a decent contract. What was it, 2 years, like $10 million? I'm stunned the Jets let him go. But here's a guy that could bring you a little bit more as a receiver and playmaker from the tight end position. It was a really astute, good quality signing for the Jags that a couple of years ago they probably wouldn't have made and wouldn't have been in position to make and wouldn't have been able to make. But now you're a good team. You've got a good core in place. Guys will want to come and play with you. And that sounded really weird. But you get my point, you pervs, okay? But you've also was weird from a perspective standpoint, thinking about the Jaguars, is that they went into this year's draft in a lot of ways drafting best player available, not drafting for need, not with a bunch of glaring holes. They could just sit there and gamble on athletes and do different things and not have to worry about having to address this position or having to do that. You could make the argument about quarterback or not. But the fact was, this is a team that largely could take some guys and not have to worry about getting a ton of immediate contribution out of them. You get Taven Bryan in round 1 from Florida. This is a defensive lineman with versatility and high athletic upside. Is he ready to play or contribute much right now? Probably not. But if you're the Jaguars, it was worth drafting him for the flyer on the upside of what he could be 2, 3, 4 years down the road. DJ Chark the Shark, the wide receiver from LSU. This is a guy with size and great deep speed. Needs a lot of work on the finer points of being a wide receiver. But that said, again, talking about end of round 2, this is a type of athlete that the Jaguars could gamble on because the upside is definitely there. But then you also get the benefit of a guy like Ronnie Harrison, the safety from Alabama, dropping to you at the end of round 3. Don't know how that happens. It's like, oh, you're just going to let the Jaguars get even better in their freaking secondary. It's crazy. But it's funny how that works. Like, because of the job they've done in the draft over the past couple of years and some of the free agents they brought in, they could gamble on guys like Bryan and Chark, but it also allows them to be able to draft best player available like a Ronnie Harrison or something like that. So it's just weird talking about the Jaguars like this. It's throwing me off my game, really. When you look ahead to this team in 2018, where do you have the most confidence in? You start off with that running game with Leonard Fournette. He's a physical between the tackles presence. A lot of defenders have to make business decisions when trying to tackle him, especially high. But one of the keys to success for the Jaguars last year was that Fournette provided you a consistent presence on the ground. And it's amazing, as much as we talk about the devaluing of the running back position, the running game still matters, and big-time running backs can still matter too. And then you look at this defense. This is a team that can get after the quarterback specifically with their front 4. If you can get after the quarterback with your front 4, it means that you could drop 7 back into coverage. Or if you want to blitz and you only have to bring 1 more, you bring 5. It means you can still have 6 in coverage. It gives you such a huge upper edge advantage compared to other defenses against offenses. And then when you look at that secondary too, not only is that pass rush really good up front, now you're talking about Jalen Ramsey and Boye. And then, you're even talking about drafting a guy like Ronnie Harrison. He's probably not even going to start as safety. This secondary group for the Jaguars is really, really good with a couple of really good corners on the outside. Jalen Ramsey is a stud, elite shutdown type of guy himself. His defense is really, really good against the pass. What am I concerned about, though? Their run defense. For as good as their defense was talked about, and as much people like to pump them up, they gave up way too many yards on the ground too consistently. Gave up some really big games to opposing running backs, and you can't have that. Because if you get into close games and teams are playing it a little closer to the vest, you have to be able to stop the run at key moments and times. And that's a concern that I have for the Jaguars, is that you can run it down their throat a little bit, and they have to get better in that space. And then I look at the offense. No more Allen Robinson, no more Hearns. You throw in Marquise Lee, tearing his ACL or whatever it was and being lost for the year. This receiving core is depleted. And you already don't have a big-time star quarterback. He needed as much help as he could get there. You're talking about, Keelan Cole and Austin Seferian-Jenkins being his top 2 options in the passing game? Yikes. And then you got to go to Blake Bortles, too. I'm sorry. Blake Bortles is not good. I don't give a shit. You can bash on me all you want. He's not terrible. He had moments where he played all right. And he had moments in that AFC Championship game that he was good. And to be perfectly fair to Blake Bortles here, on that 4th down play that Stephon Gilmore ultimately knocked away, that's one of the best throws I've ever seen Blake Bortles make. It took an otherworldly defensive play to stop the Jaguars. They could have won that game, and for all intents and purposes, they should have won that game. And we could talk about defense, but, in the first half, Blake Bortles made some good things happen and didn't screw up and had his team in a position to win. But it's ultimately a thing of how much can you really trust Blake Bortles? How far do you really think you're going to go with Blake Bortles? It's really surprising to me that when a guy like Teddy Bridgewater came available on the trade market, the Jaguars weren't trying to sit there and give up a third-round pick themselves or maybe even a second-round pick to bring in Bridgewater because, A, it either puts pressure on Blake Bortles to perform, or B, you got Bridgewater in case Bortles struggles. And that's my real concern for them, is that when all other things come to pass, can Blake Bortles make enough plays to get this team over the hump? And you're going to find that out for sure this year. I know they've invested big money in him and all of that, but you're going to find out this year because they're going to need him to be better than he was last year because the talent around him in terms of the passing game is not as good. When I look at the schedule for the Jaguars, I look at that first half of the season at the Giants, hosting the Patriots, hosting Tennessee, hosting the Jets. In that first month, you've got 3 straight games at home. It's a chance potentially to get off to a good start. Although you're facing some teams like the Giants look to be improved, the Jets look to be improved. The Patriots are the Patriots, and man, that's going to be a fun matchup week 2. The Jaguars are going to be looking for revenge, going back up to Foxborough. Week 3, Tennessee, you're hosting them, but it's a divisional game. You never know what can happen there. Then that second month of the season, you go to Kansas City, to Dallas, hosting Houston and Philly. It's not the easiest schedule. It's not the easiest slate of games to start off the calendar year with. And then you look at week 11, they host Pittsburgh. The one perk for them, I suppose, is that they get New England, Philly, Pittsburgh, all coming to their place. So some of their toughest opponents, some of their biggest, toughest games, they'll get to play them in Jacksonville for whatever the hell that's worth. It feels weird now that the Jaguars have some expectations, but they do. And you're going to probably hear some talk potentially about them being a Super Bowl team. But I wonder this year how much different it's going to be now that teams expect them to be good. They're not going to catch anybody by surprise. It's a lot different when you're trying to shock the world than when you're actually trying to live up to expectations. A defense is really good, though. They need to get a little bit better against the run, but they can also really run the ball with Leonard Fournette. If Bortles doesn't screw it up too bad, this is still a good team. While I think they'll finish second in this division, probably win like 9 games, maybe 10, they're a team that can still get to the playoffs like they did last year and make some noise. Are they good enough to truly be a championship contender? It comes down to this very simple fundamental question. Do you believe in Blake Bortles? That's your answer.